Sleep is a universally accepted remedy of many of life's ailments, from stress to cognitive fatigue. Yet the importance of sleep for longevity, especially among seniors, remains very underemphasized. Now, there is an accepted belief that interrupted sleep is a result of aging, but numerous studies beg to differ, which brings me to the question, is interrupted sleep and the repair process that goes along with it a result of aging, or is it fitness level? Today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Good day and welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. My name is Garrett Williamson. I'm president of Personal Edge Fitness. Thank you so much for joining me today on this talk about sleep and whether or not it's affected by age. Now, before we get into this, I want to tell you how to get in touch with us if you have any questions concerning this podcast or any others, or if you have any questions dealing with the many misconceptions, myths that go along with health, fitness, and aging. You're welcome to reach out to me at 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also contact me at my email address, which is Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. Personaledgefitness.com is our website and our Facebook page. You can also hit me up on Twitter or X at Team PE if you have any questions. This podcast, like many of ours, came actually from a question from a client. 35% of our clientele, as I've said many times, are over the age of 65, and interrupted sleep is something that we discuss quite a bit. There's a major misconception that interrupted sleep is a natural outcome of aging. Why do we think that? Well, because many people in their later years and later life experience regular interrupted sleep patterns. We see this throughout all ages, but more prevalent, of course, in the senior population, which leads a lot of people to believe that it is a direct result of aging. Well, you know how I feel about when we draw that conclusion that time passing on a calendar automatically causes this. Well, so far now, I'm well over 200 podcasts, and I've done multiple ones on my favorite topic, which is, of course, aging. And I've yet to find a single thing that is caused strictly by time passing on a calendar. As I've said many times, and especially with the series of aging podcasts that I've done lately, I always tell you that there's not one clinical study on the face of the earth that proves time passing on a calendar actually causes deterioration. But what about sleep? What are the benefits of sleep? There's a lot of them that you may or may not know. Of course, when we sleep, there's basically a strong association to repair with sleep. A study in the Journal of Sleep Research revealed, as I said, a strong association between sleep duration and mortality risk. And this is what I'm talking about. How does that contribute to longevity? This research found that short sleep, less than 6 hours, and long sleep, more than 9 hours, were both associated with higher mortality among seniors. And that's kind of interesting. Less sleep, most people would think, okay, yeah, I can understand that. But actually, long sleep, more than 9 hours, these were both associated with higher mortality among seniors. Ideally, 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep was associated with the lowest mortality risk. Moreover, the quality of sleep plays a role in longevity. Now, there's plenty of people that stay in bed for a long time, but instead of actually sleeping and being asleep, they're actually asleep, awake, and they may actually be laying awake for a long time in bed, and so their actual quality of sleep, though they may be in bed for 8 or 9 hours, 10 hours even, their actual time that they're unconscious and asleep is probably less than 6. This is where we're missing out on what we call restorative sleep, because it's basically essential for the body's recovery and repair, and it allows for cellular regeneration, toxin removal, and cognitive consolidation. Now, when we talk about fitness, we talk about the body's amazing ability to heal itself. This is well understood. It's what the entire fitness industry, the entire rehab industry is built on. It's built on the fact, not the belief, not the theory, but the fact that we know the body can repair itself. It's the only machine in the world that can. It's the most amazing machine in the world because of that. I mean, if our cars could operate like our bodies could, well, the car industry would be very upset because we wouldn't sell a lot of cars because every time something broke, the car would heal itself. And the human body can actually do that. And a large part of that is, of course, rest. Now, when I've talked about what we're doing in exercise, we're breaking down muscle tissue. What you're doing with a physical therapist, you're breaking down muscle tissue. You're basically telling the body, wrong, do it again, put it back right. And so you're tearing muscle fibers when you're doing that. in doing so, the body goes back and says, okay, now I've got to repair this damage. Because, like I said, the body can repair itself. And the body's smart enough to know, look, the last challenge that we had, whatever this muscle, this area that I'm repairing, wasn't strong enough. It wasn't good enough. We're going to need to make it better. And I've used the analogy several times of the three little pigs. And when the three little pigs, the first pig had a straw house. Well, when the wolf blew it down, he built a wood house. And when the wolf blew it down again, he built a brick house. And this is what your body's doing constantly. And so this is why we can get stronger and stronger and stronger. And as I've proven several times, we can do that at any age. Well, a large part of that is in the rest phase. That's why doing fitness programs that break down a muscle tissue, a muscle, completely, and then that same fitness regimen has you breaking down that muscle completely the next day is actually making you go backwards. It's not moving you forward. It's making you go backwards. This is why rest is so important. It's not that you can't train every single day, but you've got to allow those body parts to have that time off, to have that time to rest in order to recover. And you'll notice that your performance actually goes down if you keep breaking down the muscle tissue and not allowing it to rest. And obviously sleep is a big part of it. But the deep sleep is where we get those real benefits. Not just I think I closed my eyes for a little while and I think I was out for a few minutes. The body doesn't have time to repair during that time. So this deep sleep becomes very important. And so it's not just for physical, but it's also for cognitive. There's a study I came across, and I'm glad I came across this because I speak a lot about how the brain deterioration that we experience. I did a podcast on dementia and on Alzheimer's, and we think that those things come along with time. Well, here's yet another thing. And when I talked about Alzheimer's and dementia, I did the conversation about the need for water and the fact that 30% of the water that you drink is used by your brain. And therefore, if we dehydrate that brain for so many years, you're going to cause cognitive decline. There's no argument about that, by the way. There's arguments on whether or not dementia is associated with genes or if you have it in your family, you're going to get it. There's arguments there, but there's no arguments against if we actively damage the brain that we can actively cause dementia, can cause Alzheimer's, can cause problems in cognitive function. And one of those is, of course, water. But also sleep has a lot to do with that. The study I came across talked about consistent sleep associated with better memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation. This is a study that came out of the Journal of Nature Communications, and it demonstrated that disrupted sleep patterns in seniors increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease, suggesting, as I said, the quality sleep could act as a protective measure. So therefore, if you have limited sleep, you're not getting enough sleep, you're not getting enough deep sleep. And we'll talk about that in a minute about what deep sleep is and how you can actually improve it. But if we don't have enough of that, we're going to do what I've always argued, and that is we're going to have active degeneration. Now, the definition of age states that processes that change or degeneration that occurs either spontaneously or through deliberate action. And the spontaneous is the one I argue that we have yet to find a clinical study that proves that spontaneous degeneration just occurs. Every year, as they're doing research, as they're doing all kinds of studies on aging in every facet across the entire body, they're finding that, okay, well, actually, we believe that was genetic. We believe that degeneration was automatic. And actually, we found something now that actually is causing that degeneration. They're not coming out with these studies and finding out, we found out that this is another thing that deteriorates just through spontaneous action. Now, all the findings are realizing active degeneration or where we're actually degenerating ourselves. And so, yet again, not having this deep sleep is another way we degenerate the brain and degenerate the body. Some benefits of that, of sleep and longevity, is, of course, let's go to physical health. Chronic sleep deprivation is linked to higher risk of cardiovascular diseases, obesity, diabetes, and a weakened immune system. Obviously, anybody knows that that's going to impact your longevity. The stress hormones, the way your body regulates stress hormones. I did a whole podcast on stress and talked about these hormones, but the way it regulates it through sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to regulate those hormones, and that's when you get into this antioxidant trouble. You get into these patterns where if these hormones aren't regulated, they actually do damage to the body. And if they're consistently elevated, they lead to chronic inflammation, which is a precursor for many, many, many age-related diseases. And I'd say age-related because that's the term we use, but the ones we associate with time passing on a calendar. But back to the cognitive function. Like I said a minute ago, having that disrupted sleep can cause this active degeneration and not allow the brain to basically heal. I mean, we exercise our brain constantly. 30% of the water that we drink is used by our brain. If you've ever noticed, if you've been in a meeting for a long time, or you've been in a stressful situation where you're doing some negotiations, or you're just you're working homework out for extended amounts of time with your child, notice that you're very tired afterwards, and you may not be moving at all. You may be sitting still at your kitchen table in a meeting somewhere or what have you, and you realize that you're just worn out. When I go to my Vistage meetings, those are half-day, all-day meetings where I spend the entire meeting working on my business along with all the members of the group. And at the end of the meeting, all of us are worn out, and we're worn out because your brain is working the entire time. Well, just like if I were to run a marathon, I would go out and exercise my legs, my lungs, my heart, even shoulders, arms, everything that's involved in that activity. At the end of that, nobody questions, well, you're tired? Oh, wow, of course you're tired. You just ran a marathon. Well, doing these activities, being in a meeting for a long time, anytime you're using your brain for long periods of time or extremely diligently, is why kids are worn out after a test. You're worn out because you basically have exercised your brain and you've drained a lot of your energy resources and your water and what have you out of your system, and you're worn out. Sleep allows for that repair and that time off, that recuperation that your brain needs. Now, what's fitness level got to do with sleep? Okay, and also I was telling you that I would tell you how to increase your deep sleep, which is so important. Well, I'm using my hands. If you're watching this on video, I'm going to use my hands when I'm talking about this, because let's say I've got my hand up in the air and I'm saying that this right here is your heart rate, is a representation of your heart rate on a graph. And if we're using numbers, I'm going to say that, let's say that your awake heart rate, at this heart rate, this is the lowest heart rate that I have where I'm awake. Okay, let's just say, I'm just making up these numbers. Don't get too hard fixed on these numbers. But let's say that's happens to be at, 65 beats per minute. And heart rate at 65, you are awake. And if you're unconscious at, 58, something. And these are unreal numbers. People are thinking, wait a second, man, when I'm unconscious, my resting heart rate is down in the 40s. Don't worry about these numbers. I'm just using them for examples. Well, you don't hit deep sleep until that heart rate drops even deeper, even lower. And you may be unconscious at 58, but you're not hitting a deep sleep pattern until, say, your body hits somewhere in the high 40s. Well, if you're in shape, you're going to have a lower heart rate. You're going to have a lower resting heart rate. So your heart rate, instead of being at 65, where you're awake, your heart rate, instead of being at 58 and you're unconscious, your heart rate can go all the way down to 50 and you're unconscious. If you're in shape, that heart rate may drop even lower. May drop to, when you're totally unconscious, you could drop into the 30s. Badminton players who have the lowest heart rate, resting heart rate of any athlete, their heart rate's in the 20s when they're in deep sleep. And it's easy for somebody that's fit to have that heart rate drop really low when they're resting, when they go to sleep. And some of them can actually count backwards from 10 and fall asleep. And so they're not tossing and turning in bed. When you are asleep, you have a lot of things going on. Your brain's active. You've got dreams going on. You've got all kinds of things going on. You've got functions, your heart's still pumping and what have you. So your heart rate, I'm doing this in front of the camera here, your heart rate goes up and down. Let's say you're really, really fit and your heart rate drops into the low 30s. Well, it may go from 31 to 35, 31 to 38, 31, whatever. It may do that. But you don't notice it because you still are in a deep sleep pattern. So that person that's fit, that has a low resting heart rate, that heart rate drops really low because they're in shape, when they're in deep sleep, when they have those regular functions going on and they have that variation, their heart rate is going up. It's going up like you would even if you're unfit, but it's staying well below that 50 to 58, whatever, that heart rate where you're actually awake. And so you don't have interrupted sleep. If you've ever done a sleep test, either at a sleep clinic or, which I highly, highly, highly recommend no matter what your age is. But if not, if you've measured it with several gadgets, my Garmin watch can actually measure my sleep. The original Fitbits could measure your sleep. Apple Watches, I believe, can measure sleep. And you can actually look at how many times you actually wake up during the middle of the night, whether you know it or not. Well, that low heart rate, keeping that low heart rate is going to keep you from having those moments where you wake up a lot. But if you're out of shape, stressed, well then, your body's not as efficient. So the mechanics of just keeping you alive, the mechanics of just your heart and lungs working at night are much harder. They've got to go through fat tissue or a lot of cholesterol, what have you, in your cells. And therefore, the heart and the lungs have to work harder. Therefore, that drives your heart rate up. And though you may fall asleep and drop from your 58, you may only drop to about 52. And so when you start having that pattern, like the person that was fit, that was going from 31 to 35, you now go from 52 to 58. So you're asleep, awake, asleep, awake, asleep, awake, asleep, awake. And that's not deep sleep. That is interrupted sleep. And that is not allowing for that restorative process to happen. Therefore, physical restoration, you can be far more sore much longer for a workout because your body just hadn't had time to repair. Also, your energy level is going to be down. Your cognitive function is going to be down. The brain's not going to repair. This is why sleep is so important, and this is also why fitness has a direct relationship to sleep, and that's at any age. But I was talking about longevity, how sleep plays such a strong pattern in longevity and an active lifestyle, especially with our seniors. First and foremost, we attribute interrupted sleep to aging. As you see, it is actually caused by fitness level. It's also caused by stress. Being stressed about something, your heart rate's going to be up a little higher, and you may not sleep at all. There's 2 times in my life when I had such amazing, crazy things going on that I actually never lost consciousness at night. And you may have had those things before when you've been worried about something. You may have it on a regular basis. I know of people that have passed away, and I'm quite certain that they were having interrupted sleep patterns, and I know for a fact that contributed to their early mortality, just like it said in that study I mentioned a minute ago. So if you are making your body more efficient, you are combating stress through exercise, you're allowing yourself to be far more efficient, your body to be far more efficient, it's going to allow your sleep patterns to be much better. And you can turn this around. This is what's amazing. You can turn this around in a matter of a couple of weeks. I would say 2 weeks for anybody. Some people may notice it just in a few days. I finally got some sleep this weekend and I felt great. So if you've had that lifelong pattern, this is easy to change. If you're not doing any kind of fitness whatsoever, a simple walk on a regular basis will start bringing that heart rate down and allowing you to sleep better. But interrupted sleep patterns are not due to age automatically. Don't ever believe that myth. It's directly related to fitness level, stress and fitness level. So if you have any questions about this, please reach out to me at 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also contact me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. That's our website and our Facebook page. Hit me up on Twitter or X at TeamPE. Talking to you about yet another thing that is a myth that we associate with time passing on a calendar that is fully in your control. It's your responsibility. I hate to say it, it's your fault, but that means you do have control of it. You can make a change. You can live longer. And it's just one more way we help you reach your level of wellness. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.